you for having me today. I just wanted to add to information that Cyril shared with everyone. Currently, NWAIS is located, the headquarters are in Washington, D.C., but I'm currently located in the West Coast, so this was perfect invitation because I didn't have to change flights in Chicago or in Dallas going back to the East Coast. It's same Pacific time hours, so that's wonderful. Also, my husband and I, we have 2 kids. The oldest one is 10 years old, the youngest one is 7. And unfortunately, we cannot afford to send them to one of our schools. Yeah. But today, what I wanted to do is to share with you some of the trends. Every year we publish a bunch of trends, and you will see that in your books. Some of the ones that I have included here are included in your books. Your books will have additional information. But this time what I wanted to do was to show you also some numbers for your association and see how these trends are impacting your own numbers, admissions, tuition, and the expenses in particular. So let me start with the outline and also just some logistics. I'm going to share this information with Emily, but please feel free to stop me anytime with any questions. Okay? So if you ask me what are the most important trends that you should be tracking, I will say there are 2 types. The external ones, I will advise you to look on the economic variables, and we'll see in a moment which ones. The demographics, and of course, because your student population is changing, your new type of parents, right? And the competition. The competition has become a key issue for most of our schools. And there are a lot of options right now. In terms of internal variables, everybody, I'm sure, is looking at your admission funnel. Also what is happening with tuition and financial aid. And in terms of financial operations, take a look at what is the composition of your expenses and also your tuition, because unfortunately we are still very dependent on tuition as the main source of income. And whenever we have checked with CFOs and heads about the opportunities for diversifying the sources of income, 70% of you guys always say, well, it's very difficult. And when we ask, what about looking at cost-saving initiatives? They say, well, it's not possible either. And so it seems that we are trapped in this path where we're becoming more and more expensive. And at least at NWAIS, we're getting really concerned about that. And I think personally that that's the reason why we're seeing so many new competitors and so many new forms of schooling in our markets. I will also share throughout the slides some action steps, some recommendations on things to do. But let's start with economy. Normally when I do this presentation, most of the time the news are not that good. So I'm really excited to be here because at least in Seattle, the situation is wonderful. I was talking during lunch with some of you about the market in Seattle. It really reminded me a lot of what's happening in San Francisco. You have very strong industries, information communication technology, life science, healthcare in technology, aerospace. The type of people that you have in terms of college attainment is 45% of adults versus 33% in the country. And research shows that most of our prospective families come from this type of families with higher education background. And given how healthy these industries are, it's not surprising that the employment rate is so low. 4.2 versus 5% is where the latest numbers that I found. Why I think it's important to check on the economy and also the type of industries that are in your area. I would actually recommend you, maybe you already have that information from your forms, where are your parents coming from? Now, and let me give you a quick example. When I was still in Washington, D.C., many of the international organizations and the embassies there were going through some reforms and changes, especially the World Bank and the IMF. So a school like the Washington International School, whose parents come mostly from this type of organizations, needed to pay attention to what was happening to those places. Why? Because suddenly many of their parents could be out of job. In the school of my children, during the years of the recession, we also were looking at the background of the industries for our current parents and prospective families. And we noticed that we have many types. Now I'm located in Silicon Valley, so we have some parents who are coming from the high-tech industries, not surprising. But we have also like around 40% of our parents coming from industries that were related to housing and improvement. So that gives you an idea of what could happen with changes in the economy. Houses is one of the most important assets for families. And if you look at what happened during the 90s when the price of houses were going up, that is exactly the same time where the demand for independent schools were going up. So there was a positive correlation. Houses is the most important asset for families. And you can see here that the housing market in Seattle is stronger than in the rest of the country. The other information is household by income. Again, I have some numbers for Seattle, and you see that from 2010 to 2016, the percentage of people making $200,000 a year or more increased from 7% to 11%. So again, all of this is very good news. But I would advise you to have this type of information for your own parents, and to get an idea of when you put together tuition and income, what is the percentage of the income related to the tuition by each group of parents that you may have in your school. So when it comes to competition, this is where things get more and more interesting, because traditionally we used to say, well, independent schools were just competing among us. Now, when I started back in 2005 at NWAIS, that was the way we look at things. We never paid really too much attention to what was happening to the charter schools, to the public schools, or any of the other private schools that were not independent schools. But things have changed, in particular after the recession. And let me show you, for instance, I was looking at some of the numbers for your association, and in comparison to other states like Maryland, Connecticut, and California that are at the top of the list for this ranking of U.S. News and World Report for public schools. In Utah, for instance, is number 8, Washington State 19, and so on. So there is a mixed bag of perception from parents in terms of quality of public education. For charter schools, currently, there are only 7 states that don't have charter school legislation, and I have listed them here. But for instance, in Washington State, I was surprised that there is legislation that was approved in 2012, but right now there are no charter schools. But again, these are, in a sense, you're lucky because your market is, you have a captive market right now. And you need to pay attention to what is happening because legislation can change at any time. Now, in North Carolina, when I was in North Carolina, I think it was in 2011, up to that point, they had, like you, they had a legislation for charter schools, but it was so difficult to open up a charter schools that they were really not facing any competition. Now, the next year when I went over there in 2012, they have changed already legislation, and suddenly they were popping all over the place a lot of charter schools. Now, what is the problem with the charter schools? Charter schools are like a disruptive innovation. They start serving those populations that are not served by our industry. And then over the years, because remember, charter schools, the first one was opened up in 1992. So over the years, people are seeing them as good enough, and it's for free. So suddenly you start losing, normally when a new entrant in the market starts serving a different population from yours, those are the margin. Those parents who, maybe like me, cannot afford one of our schools, they start trying this other option. And over time, when you see that that is good enough, others might follow. So we need to pay attention to what is happening with charter schools as well. I have here some numbers for the different states that belong to the association. And what I found interesting is that, for instance, in the case of Utah, the percentage of charter school is overall over public schools is at 9.4%. Now, overall in the United States, it's 7%. So there is a higher market penetration for charter schools in Utah. And in terms of charter schools by student enrollment, Now you can see here Nevada has grown by 19%, Oregon by close to 10%, and Utah again by 8%. The other thing to keep into consideration also is if there are quotas or not. To give you an example, in California we have a quota for the number of charter schools that can be opened every year. So currently it's 100 schools. So every year there can only be 100 charter schools. But because of the election, this has not been the ballot this year, but every year there is this concern, for instance, in Los Angeles. The current mayor of the city wants to get rid of that quota and have LA be sort of like New Orleans, where 98% of public schools are charter. And what is the effect of the charter schools on private schooling? Again, at the beginning, we always thought the charter schools are not competing with us. They are just competing with all the religiously affiliated schools. And unfortunately, there are not too many studies on the impact that they are having, but there are 2 studies from 2012. One is from the Cato Institute, and this is the slide that I have here. And another one was done by the Department of Education. But essentially, what they are finding is that the charter schools, especially at the elementary level, 32% of the enrollment was coming from the private sector. And this was in the highly urban areas. And it was all the way down to 15% in high school level. But my theory is that that is just because, remember, charter schools at the beginning were only K to 5th. Then they were adding grades. And the other factor is that now they have been for a while in the market. And you see constantly all this news about how great charter schools are. So in DC we have a similar issue. In DC we have a captive market, we didn't have any competition, and then little by little there were charter schools popping all over the place. And now many parents in our area believe that that is good enough. We did in 2013 a study also on perceptions. When we were asking prospective families, how do you perceive charter schools versus independent schools? And believe it or not, they thought that we were very similar. They thought that we all had a high-performing student body, great teachers, but there were some differences. They told us that independent schools excel in these 3 areas. Helping students gaining an edge in college admission, building student character and values, and providing an individualized attention. But they didn't see our schools as providing a warm and friendly environment. We also asked them, what about the charter schools? How do they compare to independent schools? They said that there were 2 things that stood out. One is the fitting with their family lifestyle, and the second one, the strong parental involvement. Homeschooling is another interesting trend because, at least in Washington State, seems to be, it has a larger presence than in the rest of the country. Today, actually, I saw the news, there is a new study from the Department of Education on homeschooling. And right now, so these numbers are dated, but they are very similar still. The homeschooler market in the United States is 3% something. And now we are 1.8 million students being homeschooled. And the reasons why parents are doing homeschooling, the number 1 reason is the concern about the school environment, followed by the dissatisfaction with the current academic instruction. So what is interesting is that this idea of who is homeschooling, normally we tend to believe that these are parents without college instruction. But the numbers show that 44% of these families have bachelor's degree or higher. So something that might be, we don't have numbers yet, we need to do more research on this. But I remember also, back in 2012, when we had the annual conference here in Seattle, out of our 5 keynote speakers, 2 of them were former families from independent schools. And then they decided to do it yourself. They thought that they could get together with other parents and start their own school. So they were homeschooling their children. And these were not parents without education. One of them was actually a professor at one of the universities here, and he was in the use of technology for marketing design. But they thought that they could be more efficient. And some researchers call this type of parent the do-it-yourself parents. The thought is also that in big cities like in Seattle, in San Francisco, in Washington, D.C., or New York, there are more opportunities for these type of parents to do it by themselves. I have also some numbers for, in North Carolina, for instance, to show you the importance of homeschooling. In this state, there are more homeschoolers than all students in private schools. That to me was also surprising. This was in 2014. And I also have some numbers for homeschooling in Washington State. It's very difficult to get good numbers on homeschooling, so take this, I found some information, but I don't know how accurate it is. But it says that for the next year, it will increase by 2.6%, and the percent of students who are homeschooled is 2.8%. To put things into context, the national number said that 3% of students in the United States are homeschooled, and independent schools will represent between 1 to 2% of the entire market. So the for-profits. Again, back in 2012, when I was talking with one of these keynote speakers from the area here in Seattle, he said to me, since you guys are so expensive, you are the reason why there are so many for-profits popping all over the market. There is a big gap between charging $0 and charging $37,000 or $40,000. And many of these people are actually products of independent schools. Max Ventanilla is the CEO and founder of the very well-known Old School. And when he was trying to find an independent school for his daughter, he toured many of our schools in the Bay Area, and he didn't like any. Isn't that interesting? He didn't like any. And you know why? Because he said that all of these schools reminded him of his school when he was a child. And he said that is not possible. Why we haven't changed the way we're teaching students? So he thought that he could do it better. So we have been talking also with the CFO of the Old School. Again, a former employee of an independent school. Many of their faculty or administrators actually had some experience with independent school. But the thought for the Old School is this idea of having individualized learning approach, the learning playlist. So a student will have just a file that follows him or her throughout the entire time in school, and any teacher looking at the file knows what the student learned or didn't learn and where the student is. The other goal of the Old School is to use technology in such a way that they can really pinpoint to at what point when the teacher is saying A, what is the reaction of students in the class. So they hope that they will be able to develop a very strong software that will help teachers in teaching better. So a lot of actually it's interesting, when we ask them about how many people they have more people in IT than faculty. They have 26 children per class, and maybe they are not training them, but this use of technology is really their priority. And that's the reason why they are investing so much money right now on the technology. To give you also some idea, when you do the math here, they are charging between $26,000 to $27,000 a year, and the average tuition in San Francisco, many of these old schools are in San Francisco, in the California area, the standard tuition is between $37,000 to $40,000. So there is a gap there. We also asked them, do you think that you're already attracting parents from independent schools? And of course they said, no, at this point, no. We're attracting a very type of parent who are interested in the use of technology. Another example is this BASIS independent school. BASIS started as a chain of charter schools, but now they have a reputation for excelling in academics. So the type of parents that they attract are those parents who are focusing only on academics, because if you think about it, the model that we have is you pay a tuition and you get a lot of options, right? Normally it reminds me of when you buy a cable system, right? You get all of these channels, but you don't use all of them. So in BASIS, that's what they figured out. They say, we can charge families a standard fee for the academics, and whatever is additions, we don't need to have a full-time teacher doing that in the school. We can partner with some of the organizations that are close by, and we need a critical number of families to be able to sustain that program and offer that option. So when we visited basic school in Silicon Valley, it was interesting also to see the diversity of their families. It was 95% Asian families, 95%. Now, granted, you might say, well, this is Silicon Valley, but you will see when we talk about the demographics, these are the newcomers, and they find this option really appealing. The other appealing piece is the price. It's 26,000, or well, in this case, it's 22. But the school that we visited was 26,000, and the class size was 26 students per class. Untitled Chapter Academy is another for-profit, and they just started this year in DC. They are from Canada, and it started as a summer camp. So they thought they were very successful as a summer camp, and then they expanded into the International Global High School, and also an online option for students. They run a very lean organization. Most of these for-profits do it. They centralize all the basic operations, like the CFO office, the hiring of personnel. And so their goal is that the head is a headmaster teacher. The head focuses on the teaching and learning. Everything else is managed at the headquarters. But with John Templeton, he's a product also of independent schools. He's a board member in some of our schools in the east part of the country. And his goal, he said, is that he wanted to create a school that was an independent school, affordable for most people. And that's the reason why he partnered with this guy from Canada, Blythe. And now they are actually searching right now for a head of school because they are about to open up another school in New York. The interesting thing is that in DC, they have small class sizes because they only have 8 students. And they are charging maximum 15,000 a year, which is like, we don't know how they are doing this. Now, of course, when we ask them, how much are you paying to faculty? How much are you paying to administration? They say that everything is a competitive market prices. That they are offering a very competitive option for faculty and staff. We heard also that in many of these cases, because they are for profit, they are offering, part of the offer for faculty and staff is stock options. And that's another concern that we have, because it's not only that they might be after our current and prospective families, they might be also after our faculty and staff. And in Untitled Chapter Academy, the goal is to offer this experiential learning experience for children. And why they chose DC? They told us that they chose DC because it was an experiment. They wanted to see how would it work in the American market. And because in DC, all the museums are for free. So they started with they essentially wanted to have that option to take students out. You can take the metro, or you can just pass them, walk around. And the very interesting piece is they claim that in independent schools we have gone the wrong route, because we are we manage the whole process. We offer so much support to our children that we are not helping them anymore. So they think that what schools should do now is give them more agency to the way they learn and what they are learning. And so that's what they are offering. So what can we do? I have some options here, but measure your student outcomes and experience. To assess how well your school is educating students. You can also gather some data on individual student progress to show what is your value add, what is the return on investment that parents are doing in your schools, to identify areas for improvement, etc. And you probably know very well that the market right now is totally saturated with assessment options. No, but I included some here because, for instance, the first one, the measures of academic progress, is an adaptive test that you can use for any student in your school. No, and it challenges all the students, even those who are A+ type students, no, because it tells you exactly what each of them knows and what the student doesn't know. No, the other one is the college and readiness work assessment. It tries to assess critical thinking, problem solving, these 21st century skills, and right now it's offered for middle and high school level. We also have HESI, the Engagement Student Survey, and it investigates the attitudes and perceptions, I believe, about the school. This is from the point of view of students, so it's giving students a voice. No, and there is also all this interaction with the community, and also it has some questions about the environment. No, and the OECD test for school, because this is like the PISA that parents are very aware of. In international testing, US is always at the bottom of the list. No, so this is an option to apply what you're learning in school, and they give you also comparison versus all these international markets. So the demographics. The big change is that the demographers were talking already for a while about the changes in the student population, that we are becoming a minority-majority country. But what has changed is the pace of the change. In 2009, it was the first time in the history of the country where the majority of children 3 years and younger were children of color. In 2010, there was such a decline of white children that if it wasn't for the increase in the number of Latino students, the overall student population in the US would have decreased. So some demographers are giving us these tipping points, and they are calculating that by this year, 2044, and that is something that is also included this year in your trend book, no single group is going to be an absolute majority in the country. And here are the numbers about the recomposition of children in US, between 2000 and 2010, the last time of the census. And what is behind these changes? We have two main populations that are increasing. One is the Hispanic, and it's not immigration. So putting the wall is not going to work here. These are actually second and third generation families. And that is an opportunity for us because in many Latin American countries, there is already a captive market with private school options. They are already convinced about the value of a private school option. And let me share also when we visited, when my daughter was starting pre-K in the school where we are, I remember we were sending the pictures, first day of school, and we were sending the pictures to my in-laws, and he commented to me, "Are these your friends?" I'm like, "No, these are parents at the school." And he was surprised. Why? Because many of them were Latino. So I was curious about the numbers, and I checked this at K-8 school. The eighth graders, there were 77% white. And the class of my daughter, it was only 46% white. So do you see, it's such a big difference, And in the school of my children, if it wasn't for the Hispanic families, we would be in deep trouble already. The other group is what we're calling the newcomers are the Asian families. And I'm not talking about Asian Americans, I'm talking about Asian families. Since 2009, they have already surpassed in terms of immigration to the Hispanic families. And an advantage also of this group is that 64% of their adult population are well educated, and they also have high esteem for education. The challenge that we're hearing is that many of them are not familiar with independent schools. And we have heard from some heads of schools saying that, we're having a difficult conversation with our new Asian families because they don't understand why we're charging them for tuition and then we're asking them for the annual fund campaign. So there are some little distinctions there, and we need to make an effort in explaining and being more transparent about what we do. And again, when you look at the numbers, these changes are already happening at the lower grade levels. You see here in 2005, 2006, in kindergarten, 23% were students of color, but in 2015-16, that number jumped to 29%. And same thing with all the other grades. So in the lower grades is where we see the impact of the demographics. And I wonder also, we have heard also on an anecdotal basis that some schools are having a challenge in filling up seats at the K-8 level, in particular pre-K. I wonder if this is an issue with the demographics, that maybe we don't have enough students in our area, and by that I mean our traditional families. So here are some compositions of students of color by the association, and you can see how the number of Caucasian students decreased from 76% in 2005, 2006, and now it's at 61% in 2015-16. We have an important number of Asian American families, around 9%. Multiracial also has increased a lot from 2.6 to 5.6. And sorry, the only reason why I'm not mentioning African American students is because the projection is that they are going to remain stable. They represent around 13% of the population. And Hispanics, right now I think in our school overall, in NWAIS there are around 4%, but in the whole system, educational system, they are close to 28%. So there is a huge gap. And for Asians, we have the opposite. Overall in the educational system in the United States, there are around 4 to 5%, but in our schools it's 9 to 10%. So in Seattle, of course it's good to know what is the composition of your current student population, but it's also good to pay attention to what the trends are. Right? So this is how well your school numbers match to those of your area. Now here you can see that the interracial is 14%, Caucasian is slightly lower. Now you were at 61 here, and here is 59. So it's a good match. Now what you need to pay attention is to this definition of Hispanic, because unfortunately the census asks two types of questions. They first ask you what is your ethnicity, if you're Hispanic, yes or no. And then they ask you change all that applies. So you can be, you can check white and Hispanic, you can check black, you can check Asian, you can check more than one race. And the other issue that has happened is where it says other race, normally most of these people were also Hispanic because they didn't think that any of these labels identify themselves. So the census right now is trying to address that issue by asking, overall in the pie, if you're Hispanic or not. But right now you need to pay attention and look at the number that says Caucasian, not Hispanic. And that number, for instance, is 53%. We also recommend checking at the projections, because if you're really having issues in attracting some families, it might be demographics. In areas like in Philadelphia or in Maryland, that was essentially what was happening. Some of our schools were seeing declining numbers because there were not enough students. And here in this graph, and this is from the Demographic Center in NWAIS, you can see that the multiracial students are the ones that are at the top, projected to increase by almost 7%. And here again you see the number of white, non-Hispanic students decreasing by more than 3%. The other type of information that I would advise you to keep an eye on is the new type of parents. One of the hypotheses that we have at NWAIS is that our schools were a perfect match maybe for the baby boomers and maybe also for the Gen Xers. But what about the millennial parents? We don't know. We're actually trying to do some new research and understanding their wants and needs. But just quickly, what has happened is that this is the generation that is still saddled with student debt. They are still feeling the effects of the recession. They are delaying buying homes. They are delaying getting married and having children. They are also putting more value on saving. Actually, there was a study that showed that they are saving more money for their kids when they go to college. So it might imply that we're also competing with college. Because someone might say, yeah, I wish I could afford a private school education for my children, but higher ed is a must. So the money I'm going to be saving is for college, not for K to 12. Also, they still rely on their own parents. So we're seeing some grandparents chipping in for tuition of their children in independent schools. The most recent numbers that we have are from 2012, I think, and it had increased from 8% to 12%. But we don't know. We don't track those numbers. We don't know how many grandparents are also helping to pay for tuition. But that might be a number that you know and you might want to track as well. And the other interesting thing is this, that they are more likely to be in favor of school choice. There were recently 2 studies done on millennial parents, and one of them said that millennial parents, only 11% of them would choose a charter school. But there was another one where it said that 85% of millennial parents would choose a charter school. So you see that we are not clear on what the trends are, but we need to start keeping attention to what these new type of parents will want from a school. And maybe these are the parents who might find the charter school good enough, or the ones who are willing to try the for-profits. So in terms of parents, we also did a study trying to understand, everybody will tell you, I want the best education for my children, I want great teachers, a nurturing environment, and yet we all have different choices when it comes to school. So we did a study based on the behavioral attitudes of high-income parents and why they choose school, with what was their end goal when choosing a school. And we found that there were essentially 5 groups. The first one, what we call the challenge seekers, they represent 10% of the market. And these are the families who were focused mainly on the academics. But it had to become, the school had to become at a reasonable price. So there were more concerns about price with this group. Then we have the success-driven parents. These are the parents who are looking at an education that is going to help you also in having an edge when applying to universities. And in this case, they didn't have too many issues with money. So we call the challenge seekers the show me the money type parents. And the success-driven, well, they are 28%. The right fit parents, these are the parents who are looking for a school that will adapt to the individual style of learning or the behavioral attitudes of their children. And then the character-building parents, these are the converters. These are the parents who want not only academics, but also the characters and values. And 79% of those parents already are enrolling their kids in our schools. So there is not too much room for improvement there. And this is the group where no matter what we do, we're not going to convince them, the public school proponents. These are the parents who will tell you, it's my duty, my civic duty, to send my child to my local school, and my kids are going to be walking to school with my neighbors, etc., etc. So they are 19% of the market. So in terms of action steps, as I mentioned earlier, maybe you can start being attuned of what millennial parents want, but we have an option to segment your market. And why is it important to segment your market? Because you can tailor your communications to the end goals of this type of parents. So when you do market segmentation, you can find out what are the motivations of parents when selecting a school. You can understand the type of parents that you have, and again, tailor your language towards their needs. And of course, you can identify the type of messages that resonate with each type of parent. And here's an example. What's interesting is that we have done this with some individual schools. And if you have enough in your distribution list, we can actually look at your profiles for current parents, for prospective parents, and those parents that were offered a place in your school but declined. And you can see that there are differences. So as a school, you can say, okay, now I understand that maybe I need to focus on this group. These are the public school proponents. I wonder why they were coming to my school. Maybe I need to check my marketing material, my language. But if a school, I think, yes, this 30% these are the type of parents that I think my school can serve better. It helps you in honing your marketing, communications, and language. You can also conduct, and most of our schools do this already, the parent and alumni satisfaction surveys. No? And the way that we recommend this to do is to have it always with a gap analysis. No? For instance, you can test of the factors below how important is each of them in regards to your child's experience at our school. And then you ask, how satisfied are you with the way we're delivering on those programs and services? No? Because this helps you to identify your strengths and the areas for improvement. And just to share with you a story, one of our older schools in Baltimore, they had this STEM program that they thought that was the reason why most of the parents were enrolling in their school. And when they did a very thorough analysis. They did the parents' satisfaction, alumni, etc., etc. And one of the things that they found is that the alumni and the current students, they were saying that STEM program was not that rigorous. And the current parents, they were saying, oh yeah, that's the best program, that's the main reason why I'm sending my little girl to this school. And so there was a mismatch. And then the school was wondering, maybe that's the reason why we're not seeing too many prospective families enrolling, because we need to look again at this program. Foreign parents are saying something, but when they have the prospective families, when they are having the conversations with the students or the alumni, they are saying something different. So how all of these trends are affecting our own admissions and internal variables in schools. In the case of NWAIS, you see that the applications are all over the place. That is interesting. And I don't know why. I don't know if these are corrections of the market or maybe just the schools that were included here. But what is interesting also is that your acceptance rate, and I have you in purple versus NAIS, all NAIS is in blue. Your acceptance rate are lower than the national level. So it means that you have the luxury to be more selective, and that might be a reflection of the type of market that you have. As I said, there are not yet charter schools, there are not yet for-profits. So it seems like you still have that type of luxury to be more selective.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Sure.
Not that, the one.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are just annual percent changes in applications. But the yield is also, your yield is higher than the rest of the country, which is also good news. The last number I have is 77% versus 70 at NAIS schools. So, and all of this is reflected when we look at the enrollment. This is actually fabulous news. In the last 10 years, the enrollment in your association has grown by close to 10%, in comparison to 2% in NAIS. And when you look at specific numbers and regions, that really varies. For many years, we used to say to the news, oh yeah, we have a very strong industry, but during the years of the recession, 2010 was the year where, boom, things were really hard for the majority. And since 2010, we saw a stabilization in numbers. We were just growing maybe 1 or 2%. And this is another analysis that we're trying to do. We're trying to understand where our members stand. And here I have 4 groups. Essentially, we calculated what was the change in enrollment. And we have some schools that what we call high decline. These are schools that saw a decrease in enrollment of 10% or more. A moderate decline, it was between 10% and 0. The moderate growth up to 10%, and the high growth is more than 10% growth. So you see here that we have close to 40% of our members in decline mode. And so that is really troublesome. And when I look at the numbers, there are some trends. These type of schools tend to be located in the Mid-Atlantic region. They tend to be small schools, and they also tend to be K-8 schools. These are the ones that are having, that we tend to see more in these groups of declining enrollment. I did the same analysis for NWAIS, and again, this was like, oh wow, this is excellent. You only have 13% of your members in this group, but still it's 13%. And this is the reason why we're saying, okay, we really need to look at our business model. Are we pricing ourselves out of the market? And now there are so many options. Yes, granted, in Seattle, you are in a very, actually, I'm sure that people will be jealous to see your numbers, but this is an opportunity for all of you to think about the future, and not wait until it's too late to make some changes. So with tuition and financial aid, you can see here, this is already adjusted for inflation, and you can see how much tuition has been increasing. Adjusted for inflation, in the last 10 years, tuition has increased by almost 31%. And I run these numbers for kindergarten, for 3rd grade, 6th grade, and high school. I only included here the slide for high school, but in all of these cases, tuition was increasing above inflation by close to 30%. And if you think, how is that matching with incomes for families, I can guarantee you that salaries have not increased by 30% above inflation, or well, in some industries maybe, but the majority of people are not there. And this is the reason why also we run this chart, putting tuition versus income as a percent of income. And I have only the top 5% of income earners in the country, and also the top 20% of income earners in the country. And you can see that this has been increasing after the recession. So even for high-income families, they are feeling the pinch. So how longer can we sustain increasing tuition? And at what point are we pricing ourselves out of the market? How has this worked? Well, most of our schools have used financial aid as a way to keep their enrollment numbers. And this is really telling. For NWAIS, the increase in the median application for financial aid was 112%, way above what happened at NIS at 53%. Also, we see the percent of students receiving financial aid. You can see how it has been increasing consistently. But in your case, it's lower than the national numbers. And who is receiving financial aid? That is another shift that happened. In the past, most of the people receiving financial aid were those families making $60,000 and less. And now, that is the group of the top fifth quintile, the fifth quintile of income earners in the country. So we're providing financial aid to those families who have more financial resources. And so we have seen this shift. Some heads said, oh, it's because some parents are gambling the system. They are just, they figured it out how to make this work. And when we have this group, the SSS group that runs, that checks for schools who qualifies for financial aid. So based on their methodology, it was interesting to see that depending on the cost of living in your area, like in this case, this was in Brooklyn. If you were charging $35,000 for a family with 2 children, if you were making up to $408,000 a year, you were qualifying for financial aid. Yes. So again, that is very telling. We are becoming way too expensive. So again, what to do? Well, one of the recommendations is to conduct a branding and visual elasticity study. And why both of them together? Because it's very difficult to ask without a context of, to ask a person, how much will you pay for a private school education without providing a context of what is the value of that education. That's the reason why we recommend doing both things simultaneously. But these type of studies can help you understanding why parents choose a school, also to compare yourself versus your competitors, and identifying what areas your strengths are and areas for improvement, and mainly also to understand how the changes in tuition impact your market share and the net tuition revenue. And this one, at what point most of your families are getting, I cannot afford you, sorry. So this is an example of how a brand analysis looks like. Now you have your school here and you have some competitors. But you can see the highlighted areas are the ones where the school is at the top. And in this case, competitor C is perceived as a better option versus the school E. And you can do this again for current parents, for prospective parents, for parents who were offered a spot in your school and declined. Depending on how robust your distribution is, you can do this also for families by different income levels, by families receiving financial aid versus those who don't receive financial aid. So you can get really a deep understanding of what is behind those numbers. We did this analysis also with one of our college prep type schools in San Francisco, and they thought, number one reason was actually was that it was too expensive. In their case, it was too expensive. And they told us, it's because you're asking everyone. But I bet you that if you cut that information by those families making $300,000 a year, we're going to see different order in the reasons. So we did that, and too expensive was again number one. So that was fine, but with this branding analysis, you can also understand why they are not sending their child to your school. And another thing that we have seen, and this is also interesting, in many cases, when the branding study came back, the number one reason was that the school was not seen as innovative. And several times our school said, what are you talking about? We were doing what we have been doing, because that's the reason why parents come to us. And again, that might be the case with the baby boomers, but maybe that is not the case anymore with the new parents. We don't know that. But again, this is just on an anecdotal basis, but what I've seen is that several times this area for improvement is that parents are not seeing the school as being innovative. And also it helps you to understand what are the sources of information they use. And this helps you in distributing your money for marketing purposes. So the tuition elasticity piece, the method that we have been using is this one is called the Western Dog assessment, but essentially it asks for different price points. It asks parents, at what point do you think the school is too expensive, that no matter how good it is, you cannot afford it? And that is over here, this point of marginal expensiveness. Also it asks you, at what point do you think that the school is too cheap, that you're doubting about the quality of the education? And that is the point of marginal cheapness on here. And this is an important number to have too, because some schools are considering lowering their tuition. So you need to know, if you're going to lower your tuition, how low can you go? And of course, the sweet spot is when these curves get to what is called the going price. So the other interesting piece about this analysis is that it gives you this area between how much can you continue increasing tuition without losing a significant number of your parents. It helps you also with your financial aid strategy and plans. And regarding financial operations, this is another set of data that we're looking at, because I mentioned to you that most of the for-profits, most of the money is being invested in teaching and learning, what is happening in the classroom. In our schools, there is a lot of money that goes to the maintenance of the buildings, having all of these different staffers taking care of our students, and you see how the different items in expenses have changed. Administrative salaries in 2008, 2009 was around 11%, now it's at 13%. Benefits is still around 13%. Teacher salaries it used to be 31%, now it's 28%. This is just for your association. No? And technology, sorry, it was 1% and now it's 2%. But when you check them individually, after adjusting for inflation, if you check out each of these expenses per student, you see this huge bar. This is the investment in technology. And we have heard, we're becoming very expensive because we're investing all of these one-to-one laptop programs. But if you think about it, yes, there is a lot of money here, but technology is still 2% of the budget. So that is not the main reason. The second one is this bar, and this is administrative salaries per student. This is a combination of having more FTE in the administrators and salaries as well. Why this is an issue? Because if you look at the number here, it has increased from 11% to 13%. And teacher salaries is only 20%. Actually, when we check at the national level, teacher salaries only increased by 7% above inflation. And we still have the same FTE of teachers. So teachers is not the issue either. Other people have said this, that the service of the debt because of all the buildings that we have in place and the maintenance of the buildings. So that's another category that we need to take a look at. But we know that the number of FTE of administrators has increased, double actually in the last 10 years. So to put things in context, in independent schools it costs us $33,000 overall is expenses per student, that's the total number. But when you ask parents, how much do you think it costs to educate a child? Parents are way off. They don't have a clue. And actually the numbers from the Department of Education are quite low in comparison to our numbers. You see here in 2012-13 it was 12,600. The census said it was 10,600. The most expensive area I think was New York, and it was 19,000. And every single time we ask parents, prospective parents, how much do you think it costs to educate a child in a private school setting? The highest price normally comes at 21,000. So that is way lower than what it really is costing us. And it's interesting because we are not making any money. We actually need to rely on our annual fund to close the gap, and we see that with the distribution of income. Unfortunately, we are still very heavily dependent on net tuition. Right now it's at 79%. And when you check out the individual items, this over here is other programs per student. All of this is adjusted for inflation. These are summer programs, renting facilities, and you are actually doing much better than other areas of the country. And this one is the financial aid. Normally, when we see this in other regions, financial aid is the one that is all over the top. But again, this is not sustainable. We cannot continue increasing financial aid. So some suggested action steps: consider outsourcing, creating this consortium. There was a group of schools that got together to have a more power when negotiating the health benefits for their staff. And they reported great benefits of having a consortium. Cross-enrollment, the unbundling. This is, I mentioned to you earlier, this is the strategy that many of the for-profits use. They have a standard tuition for the academics, and all these other programs are offered in partnership with local organizations. Some universities are considering that is the unbundling of college, alternative sources of income, and right sizing too, because we're seeing that the class sizing in independent schools have actually diminished. We used to be at 16 students per teacher, and I think now it's at 14. So studies show that actually 20 students in a class is good enough. And the irony is that when you ask parents, At what point do you think the quality of education will be damaged if you increase the number of students in the class? They normally are fine with one or two, and they don't have a clear idea of how small the class is. Actually, some parents, they say that when you have very, very small classes, it's difficult for children to work in teams, and to learn from others. So that's another consideration to keep in mind. So these are just some final thoughts. The market is changing, and our constituency is also changing. So do you know how it's affecting your school? And can you afford not to adapt? Our value, we need to be compelling, not just distinctive. Now, how do you articulate the difference your school makes to your students? And our model, we have a very expensive business model. Can you afford not to rethink your model and strategy? So I thought to finish with these cartoons. Again, I'm really glad to be here because you are in a great market. Normally this is not a story I'm telling to other schools. I show you the 40% of our members in decline. And in some areas it might be too late. But you are in a great position to start thinking about the things. Someone told me, this is a consultant who works with disruptive innovation. He said that when things come, it's like a heart attack. There is no warnings. Suddenly, boom, comes to you. And the other one, we don't want to be that color guy. We want to continue being the innovators in education. And right now, that perception is changing. Many of the new parents think that innovation is coming actually from the for-profits. So that's what I have. Thank you.